Welcome to the Narrowboat that James built. Hope you're well. Thanks for joining me. Well, this video is about toilet choices, and as you know, mine's been delivered.
If you were to ask any narrowboater what is the worst thing about living on a narrowboat, they will tell you it is the toilet. There are various options available to you on a narrowboat for removal of waste from the toilet, that is. The purpose of this video really is to obviously explain why I got this, which is a Simploo, but really it's also just to describe the various options available. And I'm not going to describe it in terms of tanks and pumps and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to talk about it in terms of being on the cut and why certain toilets might be better for certain people. So, and this is, I said, this is the one I've chosen. So there are a few varieties, but essentially there are three main toilet types. There is pump out, cassette, and composting. There are other ones. There's vacuum, there's incinerating, and there's other things. But in the main, it's those three: pump out, cassette, and composting. And each one kind of has its merits, and each one has its issues and compromises, like everything. But really, kind of depends on how you use the boat and how it's set up as to what might suit you best. For example, that the hire boats here that the guys have, obviously it's all pump out because, well, why wouldn't they? They got the machine, it's free for them to use, I guess. Of course they would do it, and it's for a hire boat, it's someone else's waste. You're just going to want a machine to deal with that. So pump out is what it is. The actual how pump out works is the toilet has a big waste tank attached to it. Not attached to it necessarily. It could be somewhere in the boat. It could be anywhere in the boat really. But it's a tank, and it's a waste tank, and that is the tank which is pumped out. And obviously, depending on the size of the tank, will depend on when and how often you've got to pump it out. And that's fine. The problem is, pump out requires two things: money, which is fine, and going somewhere that has the facilities to pump out. So, for example, at the moment during lockdown, for some people, if they are situated somewhere, they will need to work out where their pump out facility is before they run out of space. And well, you don't want to know what happens when you run out of space in your tank. So that's something to bear in mind, and given the fact that you need to pay for it is also something to bear in mind. The cost will vary from place to place, but you need to go to a marina or a wharf or somewhere with a pump out facility. There are pump out facilities up and down the canal networks everywhere, obviously, but it's something you've got to pay for, which is, well, if you're living on it, that's a weekly cost or a monthly cost or whatever it is, depending on the size of your tank. So for me, that was never going to be an option. Firstly, it needs to be plumbed in, it needs powering, it needs pumps, it needs a tank. So all of these things take up space. If it was already on a boat, it's unlikely you're ever going to take it out. You're just going to live with it. But I wouldn't install it on a boat. Certainly, I'm not on a boat this size, and for the ways I'm going to be using the boat, I wouldn't want to be bound to the fact that I've got to go to a certain place at possibly at a certain time in order to use the pump out facilities, and I wouldn't want to pay for it each time. That's just painful. So that for me is a no. And the second type of toilet you could go for is a cassette toilet. These are cassettes which are based underneath the toilet. The material drops into the cassette, and that cassette is then disposed of. It's not. The contents are disposed of. The cassette itself is obviously not disposed of. The cassettes are really small. Maybe for two people it might last 2 or 3 days. Obviously there's various factors that come into that. But they're really quite small. It's not going to last you weeks and weeks or months. So the sorting of it is something you are going to have to do on a regular basis. And the sorting of it is the biggest problem of it all. The problem with the actual toilet itself, these days, it needs a heck of a lot of really potent chemicals. It's better than it was, but it's still, compared to other options, you need a lot of chemicals. They are really not particularly environmentally friendly. That's the problem with the actual toilet. The other problem is obviously it needs plumbing. Some of them require power. So there's a few kind of installation kind of things to bear in mind. But as I said, the main problem, without a shadow of a doubt, is the sorting out of the waste. Unlike a pump out, where you put a pump in it and sit down, have a cup of coffee, and 10 minutes later come back to it, this is all about you sorting it out. You've got to take the cassettes off the boat to a place called an LSAN point. There's loads of them up and down the canals, and you've got to then, so firstly you've got to get the cassettes off the thing. They weigh quite a bit, and you've got to carry it down the boat, up, off, down the canal to the towpath. You see people with trolleys and stuff carrying these kind of grey boxes. So that's a bit of a faff. You might not want to, something you don't really want to be doing regularly, but you would have to. And then you, as I said, you go to this place called the LSAN point, which is it's just the worst place on the planet. It really is. It's the best ones are utterly disgusting. You can imagine lots of narrowboaters taking their boxes of their own waste into a very small, often brick built, cold, damp, dark, dingy, 3-walled hollow, and with a hose that everyone else uses, shove it in, rinse it out. Some of them don't have anywhere to hold or rest the container, so you've got to be literally kind of like resting it on your knee and rinsing it out, and sometimes literally into a hole in the floor, into the ground. I mean, they're gross. They're really, really gross. Sometimes you might have to queue for that pleasure. So I wouldn't go for it. I really wouldn't. It's never something. Every time I see people going up and down the towpath, I think, oh God, why are you still doing this? There is a better option. You don't have to be doing that. Or you go into a chandlery and you see all those massive things of chemicals you've got to have on board all the time. I mean, these are massive. So, anyway, each to their own. But for me, if I bought a boat with one of them in it, one of the first things would be to rip that out. So that is why I've gone for the third option, which is one of these. It's a composting toilet. To my American viewers, you guys have been using these for years, and kind of the market leader is a big American company that does this. Really, the reason I've gone for this is because there's no plumbing, which is an advantage. You literally put it on the floor, and there's a little bit of a tiny bit of wiring as a fan, which kind of blows some air from outside in, but that's it. There's no water, plumbing, or anything like that. And it's composting. As you kind of can probably, your imagination would work out, it sorts itself out. That's the beauty of it. The toilet itself separates the solid from the liquid, and the liquid goes into a canister. You just kind of throw that somewhere. So LSAN point, possibly. I mean, if you'd like to go to that, or into a hedgerow, down a drain, whatever. Not into the cut, obviously. But that's fine. The solids, they take quite a while to compost, a few months, which you might think sounds gross, but it's a completely sealed unit, and the fan from outside, which blows the air in, really works, and they produce no smell at all, which is quite incredible to think of it. There's no chemicals. There's sometimes some people want to put sawdust sometimes in the bottom thing. You don't need to. There's no agitating handle. Some of the models have agitating handles. There's none of that. It literally just works, and it's amazing. And then every few months you end up with a very small amount of what looks like compost. Obviously it's not, but it looks like compost. And what you do is you put it into a small nappy bag or dog poo bag or something like that, and you put it in the bin. You could put it in a dog poo bin, but you could just put it in the bin. That's it. Some people just chuck it into a bush, or occasionally you'll see along the hedge, along the towpath, a little neat mound. So there's good and bad ways of disposing of this stuff, but it's easy. It's pretty hygienic, certainly in comparison to all the other things. But it is, it's not offensive. There's no smell. Certainly by that time, when you're actually looking at it again, there's as I said, it looks like compost. No smell, and it's a tiny amount. It's incredible. It's just the way it works. As I said, people in the US have been doing, and other places in the world have been doing this for years. Nature's Head is the market leader by a country mile in this, and I think most kind of they're big sellers in America. RVs have them and stuff. They're massive. I mean, they're huge. They're huge things, and they've got like handles on the side and all this stuff going on. I mean, they're £1,000, so but it's not something I'd have considered for two reasons. Firstly, the size of it, but secondly, the budget, the cost. This one I've gone for, which is a Simploo, is brilliant. It's slick, it's stylish, it's got no handles on the side. It is, I mean, look, we are talking about a glorified bucket. Let's not beat about the bush. It is what it is. But this one looks good. A lot of the other ones don't. They got it quite clearly obvious where the compartments are, shall we say. And I just wanted something which looked quite, stylish, I guess, for as much as, a toilet can be stylish, and this one certainly is. So I'll get it out so you can have a look. And that's it. Simple. I mean, it's got one hole at the back where the fan goes into, and there's a pipe which goes to the outside to a skin fitting, but that is it. Inside it there's a pot which collects the wee, and there's a pot at the back which takes the other stuff. Every few months, into a little bag in a bin. That's surely the way to go. Surely. 320 quid. Looks brilliant. I mean, I can't fault it. So, happy days. Hope this was useful in terms of showing you what the options are available to you or on narrowboats, and my reasons as to why I would go for a composting toilet over the other two options. But as I said, each to their own. Hope this has been useful. Until next time, take care. Bye bye.